Queer's the Thing, we watched The Feels. I'm Madison, she, her.
I'm Rachel, they, them. I'm Talia, she, her.
I'm Lee, they, them. So we watched this movie on Netflix, and the synopsis for it was, during the bachelorette weekend, a lesbian couple's relationship hits a snag when one of the brides confesses to never having an orgasm. And that's where the synopsis ends, and that is not nearly where the movie ends. We should talk about the trailer first, because we saw the trailer for this movie. Well, Madison saw the trailer for this movie and thought it looked interesting and cute and pretty good for, like, a queer movie, which is unusual, unfortunately.
I mean, it had Constance Wu in it. I was paying attention to where that was going.
That was honestly my favorite part of the movie.
Yeah, I saw the trailer for it. It was definitely on some list of, like, queer movies that are being slept on. And I sent it over to the group and was like, we should watch this. And we feel the trailer was very misleading overall. We just watched it as a refresher. Mm-hmm. And it was spun as though it was a comedy that was going to have some hard moments in it and some topics that they were going to talk about that were a little more serious, but, like, done in a comedic way. And that was not at all what we felt came out of the actual movie. They had some, like, titular words that were done in the trailer, and Lee has those.
Oh yeah, it was all the laughs, all the tears, all the feels. And I really got none of that from this movie. There was maybe 2 laughs.
2.5.
I had 0 tears, and I felt nothing.
Do you ever, though?
Awkward and annoyed.
Yeah, that's true. There were some negative feels, but I don't...
Nothing positive.
I really hate the word feels, too, because it reminds me of, like, 2008 Tumblr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of the feels.
So the fact that it was titled that probably should have given us that little feeling of, like, well, let's back away slowly and with a stick.
To be fair, I think it was unfortunately accurate to describe the feelings.
Yeah.
Pretty much took the several funny moments. Like, any moment that I felt like I was gonna give a little chuckle was cut and spliced into the trailer.
Which, like, isn't unusual for a movie. Like, all movies are like, look, we made a funny thing, let's put it all in the start of the thing. But the problem was that they did it purposely to fool you. It was, like, marketed as a comedy with some drama, and it came out as, like, the worst parts of hanging out with people you've never met before.
It was,
and, like, 2 times that you laughed.
It was very much how I felt like... It wasn't to the same caliber, but it's the same level of disappointment you get if you watch the Sucker Punch trailer versus watching the Sucker Punch movie.
I never watched Sucker Punch
because
I was afraid it would ruin it for me.
Well, it would have. Hang on to all that the trailer gives to you because it is beautiful, and don't watch the movie because it is highly disappointing. It not to the same degree as that, but the same concept where it definitely, whoever was given the job of creating the storyline within that trailer, like, kudos to you, but you did not accurately portray the movie.
It felt like I ordered a movie from Redbox, picked it up, brought it home, and, like, opened it up, and a different movie was inside. It was like,
actors.
I can't wait to watch, like, Fast and Furious, and I brought it home and, like, popped it in my DVD player, and, like, Kung Fu Panda 2 started playing, and I was like, hold on a minute. But it also wasn't nearly as enjoyable as Kung Fu Panda 2. But gayer, I guess. There was a literal bear in that movie, though.
I would love to see Kung Fu Panda 2, but gayer, just to clarify.
Kung Fu Panda 2, but gayer, coming soon.
Yeah. To theaters.
No,
completely made out of stop-motion sticky notes that Lee has done.
Yes. We should just say first off, like 3 minutes in, that we're gonna be talking for a bit without spoilers, so that anyone that wants to hear something about this movie without knowing everything about it can get a gist of it and like our feelings about it. And then at some point we're gonna tell you like, hey, there's gonna be spoilers, and that's when shit's gonna go off. And we're gonna get like down and dirty and talk about everything that happens in the movie. Which will be like the good part, but I guess if like you don't want that, that's fine, and you can bail out and watch the movie first and come back. So we're still in spoiler-free zone. We'll let you know when. Do we want to give our ratings, and then we can get into the spoilers, if that sounds...
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Yeah.
So we're going to go with overall rating for the movie from everyone. Mm-hmm. Out of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being, like, the worst movie you've ever seen, probably not even a movie, and 10 is like, this is my new favorite movie, and I now have a t-shirt of it that I didn't even buy. I just have it now.
I crocheted it with my tears.
I crocheted it suddenly during the movie.
I feel attacked.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
I was crocheting while we were watching this movie.
Well, did you look? Does it have the feels written on it? Is it your new favorite movie?
No.
Okay.
So this
Failed.
rating scale is like
Failed.
1 to Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah. 1 to like, oh my god, I saw Furiosa for the first time and fell deeply in love.
It's like that.
The intense look you were giving me while you said that.
Anyway.
I know you know I feel the same.
Yeah.
It's hard for me because I feel like in order for me to accurately give it, I have to have a mentality of like a movie that hits every number so I can directly compare it.
Mad Max Fury Road.
I mean, I wouldn't give that...
I'm going to call it Mad Max Fury Road Part 1 because I'm still holding out.
I mean, I'd have to give it like a 4. I was so disappointed by this. Maybe somewhere between the range of a 4 to a 6 because it wasn't offensive or awful in that way. It was just disappointing.
Yeah.
See, I can't even come up with a number. It was just too... I can't think of like what I would put it as because it's just... I wanted to turn it off. It was so awkward and just like not... It was almost like a whole bunch of clips put together.
Right.
And not almost like a solid movie.
Right. So you're at crumpling up the scorecard and throwing it away.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, there was nothing like too offensive or anything, but it just... Like, I can't.
Yeah. Just throw the whole dang script away.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we can curse on this or not.
Oh, I've said shit like 5 times.
Okay.
If we can, I'm a little screwed.
We're about to talk about orgasms, so I really don't know that cursing
You know what,
is really where our level of don't say it's gonna be.
That's really fair.
If someone cursed me with orgasms, I'd thank them. Go ahead.
Yeah, everyone was going around with ratings. I'm like, oh no, I didn't think about this before. I want to say 3. 3 was originally what came to mind because I felt like I was either bored or I was extremely anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a 3 also because it's definitely not one notch under neutral. But really, like you guys have said this too, that it wasn't bad because it was offensive. It was bad because it was a poorly told story and a bad story that I didn't enjoy. But it was like, okay, it was a queer movie. And yeah, there's that. Okay, so our next rating isn't really a rating. It's just, was there a happy ending? So consensus for that?
I think the movie thought it had a happy ending.
That's correct. I'm going to say that's all we need to say on that.
Yeah.
The movie totally thought it was a happy ending, and it...
I mean, it was technically, like, it wasn't an unhappy ending.
Yep.
But it was
an unhealthy ending.
right.
Yeah,
that's
there
what
we
I'd
go.
say.
And our last criteria for these movies is going to be death toll, because unfortunately that is something that happens a lot in queer movies. But luckily, or maybe unluckily, none of the characters died in this movie.
Yay.
And now we're going to get into spoiler zone, I think.
It's time for spoilers, naughty children.
Can you add like a whip crack sound? Welcome to the spoiler room. Here we are.
I don't want to call it that.
The spoiler room. It's
I need to stop looking at you when you speak to me because I just can't do this anymore.
Okay, from here on out, we're going to have spoilers. So pause this if you don't want spoilers, go watch the movie, and then come back and listen to it and be angry with us. So now that we're in the spoiler part, we're going to give a little bit more in-depth of a synopsis than what Netflix gave, because that was a little bit bullshit. That was like one of the storylines that they followed. But, so the whole thing is, the two main characters, Andy and Lou, are going to be getting married. So it's following their bachelorette weekend. They have this house that they've rented that's like with a giant pool and everything. And their friends are coming over to like set up a party, and they're just going to spend the weekend together. The first person we see is Josh, who is Andy's friend from childhood. He comes in, he's setting up the party. Everyone else comes along, and then things go downhill from there, essentially. Lou's sister doesn't show up right away. Josh sleeps with her sister when she does show up. They do Molly. It's like a shit show. Do you want to jump in at all? Because, like, it's...
I think that there was no... They made several small attempts at character development, but for the most part, you didn't get to know the characters because their introduction to them was them all walking into a house together and having several conversations at once. So you really didn't get a good feel of how the people interacted with each other within the room. Your sort of understanding of the people and the relationships together was Lou saying that there was nobody in her corner that ended up at the bachelorette party because they were either late. Except for Helen, who's her friend from work. So Which...
Can I point out, it doesn't even seem like Lou even likes Helen. Did anyone get that?
All of the character relationships are extremely uncomfortable because we hear very briefly who is, like, related to who in what ways, and then they really don't interact in any way that shows that they know each other or are friends.
Right. And to me, it always sounded, whenever Lou started talking about Helen, it was always sort of negative.
I have a lot of issues with Helen's characterization that we can get into.
Yeah, Lee has some deep feelings about Helen, and we haven't heard any of them because they wanted to save it for this.
I'm gonna say it now if that's cool.
Go ahead. Give us your Helen spiel.
So Helen is one of the side characters who she doesn't really get like a storyline of her own. She's kind of there as comedic relief. Thinking like what's her name in Bridesmaids?
Melissa McCarthy?
Yes, yeah. She kind of plays that sort of character, and why that bothers me is she is like the most butch-looking one of the party, like the only one that is clearly like non-traditionally feminine, and she is the comedic relief, and she's also like uncomfortably awkward, and that's always played for like laughs at her expense, and that's a very common trait that I see in queer characters that like present outside of their gender in general, but also specifically like women who are butch, and I hate that a lot. She's the only one with like shorter hair. She's wearing like a button up the first time we see her, and like all of her lines are about how awkward she is and how weird it is, and like how like she doesn't quite fit in there, and it's just really uncomfortable to see, especially in a movie that's like centering around two women in a relationship, and like both of them are traditionally feminine, and then their friend who is not is like the odd one out that's like, oh, we don't really like Helen, but she's like fun to be around because she's weird.
Yeah,
and that's why I hate it. Yeah. But it's like, it's also weird because she has some really funny lines, but it's always at her expense.
It's at her expense, but it's also because what it is her being the comedic relief, she carried all of the comedy, I have to say. There were some lines that were funny that other characters said, but all of the setups were for Helen to be the comedic relief. And when no one else in the movie is at all responsive to that, it makes it look like she's a clown because everyone else all of their feelings throughout the whole movie are very serious. Mm-hmm. So it feels like a very odd juxtaposition when you pull in, you know, Helen trying to be funny and everyone else is like very somber in the scene.
That's why I bring up Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids, because it's really a mirror of that character, because she in that movie is like the more butch one who's like always dressing like not traditionally feminine and talking in ways that are like, whoa, what are you talking about? And the jokes are very similar. Like the setup and the payoff is always like, she's weird, she doesn't fit in, and we're laughing at that because she doesn't know what's going on and how to react in this situation. I fucking hate that.
I see the fire in your eyes.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of feelings about that, and how like representations of lesbian couples like very rarely show like one or both of them being butch or like at all non-feminine in media. They're usually two traditionally feminine women together, which is the case with this movie.
And our feelings towards her being like the weird one isn't because like it was just an odd script writing and us feeling like she felt very out of place. Like it was openly acknowledged in a weird storyline that she in culinary school was known. What was the original one?
She was known as Weird Helen.
Weird Helen.
And there was another Helen in their class, and the other Helen was known as Regular Helen until one time they were supposed to be making hollandaise sauce or whatever. And the other regular regular Helen didn't do it well, and then threw a knife,
and so she became Psycho Helen.
And then Weird Helen, who was the Helen in the movie that we're following, became Regular Helen. But we find out that she's like in one of the main characters' phones is Regular Helen, because like this is so much a part of like who she was that she went from weird to like not as weird as the other one, that like that's still how they refer to her.
But we need to understand that there's context to her being the weird character.
Oh, 100%. It's not just like, oh, we're watching this movie and she was weird to us. It's framed as her being out of place. Like, she doesn't pick up on the social cues, and like she creates the situations that the audience is supposed to feel awkward about. Or,
she
like,
openly announces that there's tension,
right?
And that she thinks that's weird.
She's like the classic, like, clueless sitcom character who like walks in and is like, "What's going on?" when clearly there's something very obviously wrong.
Yeah.
So beyond Helen,
sorry,
no,
Helen.
There are just other characters that get. You said earlier something about none of the characters feel like they interact with each other. That is very accurate to how I feel now that you've said it. It feels right. It feels like they were all kind of existing and like surface value interacting with each other, but nobody had a real conversation with each other.
Even the main characters didn't feel like the main characters of the story to me.
Yeah, I felt like it kept switching to like whose story we were supposed to be following. It was so annoying. Like,
it was too short of a movie to have that many things happening. It really was it was like, I guess I shouldn't have it in front of me, but it's probably like a 90-minute movie, and it felt like there were far too many things happening. It's like when you have too many dishes at Thanksgiving dinner, you can't have everything on your plate and accurately enjoy any of it.
Mm. That's a lie.
I enjoy every bit of it. Yeah, and to just like go over, if it's like the main story, you know, loud air quotes for everyone so you can hear that. The main story between the two brides, that like Lou has never had an orgasm, like not even with Andy, and like that's a problem for them, and like Lou won't open up. That's a storyline.
The problem with that I found was like apparently they showed it in the beginning they had sex, and she like pretended to have an orgasm, so you don't know.
I feel like she didn't even really pretend in that scene.
Right.
Like that.
It was to be clear, it opens up with them having sex.
Right.
And we're like, as the audience, supposed to see this as like a very like, oh, like they're a great couple. They're doing a good thing. Like they're having fun, and then they go on a run, and they're like all cute together.
No, they ran first, like, and then had sex.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Whatever. But yeah, it like almost opens up with them having sex in the movie, and it's supposed to be like a very like cute thing, I think.
So Andy grew on me further into the movie, but when we were watching the movie at one point you mentioned how you liked Andy or felt bad for her, and I had a very different reaction to that, because I feel like in that first scene where they are having sex, it ends with Andy having an orgasm, but clearly Lou isn't very did not have an orgasm and doesn't look very into it.
To me,
but
it
Andy
like
didn't
it was framed that she was supposed to be. Like she was.
But Andy felt it looked like they did it with some of the lines they were doing in the weird storyline with Josh. I feel like they were trying to frame it as Andy being very self-minded and self-centered and not really paying attention to other people. So when they had it so that Lou was not having an orgasm, they had it so that after Andy orgasm, she kind of sex was over. So I that's what I was taking out of that, was that Andy was kind of a selfish lover, and after she had an orgasm she wasn't paying attention to whether or not her partner had finished. So that's kind of what I got out of that scene. And that trailed into when they were at dinner. Lou was telling the story about regular Helen. She and Helen were kind of going back and forth and trading different aspects of that story, but that Andy interrupted and finished it out for her, even though she wasn't even there. So those were the kind of the setups that I took out of Andy being the overbearing or overriding Lou and taking advantage of the fact that Lou maybe wasn't as outspoken as she was, and sort of being a little selfish.
She never came across as selfish to me.
Yeah, I didn't get that from Andy. To me, it was more, the whole issue was that Lou couldn't Lou. Yeah, never mind. That Lou couldn't communicate and wouldn't, and just for whatever reason just pretended to orgasm from in their, I guess, past experiences. And they're at their bachelorette. They're gonna be getting married. So how long was this relationship where you were pretending the whole time? That that makes no sense to me, that you had to pretend for that long. You couldn't.
Here's the thing. It's
Get
it? I think this movie, the storyline that they were going for could have been really great. It could have been about opening up to your partner and learning how to communicate, and also from Andy's side, realizing when something's wrong with your partner and being more in tune with them, and them coming together and coming closer as partners. And right before their marriage, they're oh my god, we realize we haven't been communicating, what do we do? And they could have just had this great moment where they were whatever, talk it out, and they eventually in the end become so much closer, and now they know this, and it could have been funny, the trailer, and oh my god, you've never had an orgasm. And clearly they're both not okay with this, but then they're okay, well now we gotta work together and figure this out. And then they're trying all these stupid, crazy ways to get her to have an orgasm or something. I think it has the potential to be a really fun, cute movie with also a serious, story under it. Where, yeah, not every relationship is perfect just because, these two people seem perfect. You also need to, work for it. But it was none of that.
That was really disappointing. I think, and this is going to become, I'm going to say it all the time, and this is going to become my free square on bingo. It felt like a draft. It really didn't feel fully realized. Mm-hmm. And I think what it is because going along with the fact that none of the characters really seemed to feel like they interacted with each other. There are a couple other side characters that we haven't, and I don't even know if we should go into their sideline stories because they're really not important to what should have been out of the movie. And what happened is even when all these problems were realized, they sort of went, even Andy tried to get it so that Lou would talk to her about what was going on. Andy, where I really started to like her again and maybe realize that my perception of her from the beginning of the movie is different, is that she had a moment of denial, and then her friend called her out on it, right. And then she immediately went into the zone where it was okay, what can I do to fix this? What am I doing wrong?
We see her researching on her laptop, how do you make a girl orgasm?
She clearly realizes that she's maybe not doing her best, or that there's sort of this point.
She takes on the responsibility.
She takes on the level of responsibility that she should be responsible for. She calls out Lou for not telling her, saying how can I know that there's a problem if you don't tell me there's a problem? And they have that moment, but then after that's acknowledged and Lou kind of is you're right, I should have told you, or now you know.
Lou never really had that moment until the very end. Lou ran away from the problem.
Literally. Ran into the woods.
But Lou ran away after Andy was like, I want to fix this. Like, how can I help you fix this?
Yeah.
And they did end up having sex, which ended in a really confusing way. Because Andy was going down on Lou and had an orgasm in the middle of it. And Lou got mad, which I know Lee was confused about because we had comments about it during the movie.
Because I take that as a big compliment. She's like, no one was even touching Andy.
But it just backtracked any progress that movie could have made towards them being like, okay, now we're going to work this out together. It was like, oh, it didn't work out the one time we tried, and now Lou's angry again. Lou pisses me off.
Yeah, I didn't like Lou.
And then Lou ran away for like 20 minutes and went and sat and looked at the river, and several, like, you know, her sister came and talked to her, and her sister had her own thing happening with divorce and all of that, and there was a bunch of drama that was happening with, like, her and other people in the house.
I would just like to list off the other side stories that happen, because we're talking about this as if, like, the whole movie is focused on that. No. Maybe 20 minutes of the movie actually discuss this problem.
Even though that's what I wanted the whole movie to be.
All of the other storylines, we have Andy's friend Josh, who she's known since childhood, is a complete creep and asshole, and is hitting on, like, everyone at this party, and has been in love with Andy for years. I say love loosely. Has been, like, lusting after Andy for years. He sleeps with Lou's sister during the bachelorette party. He's not doing a great job at being, like, a host of the bachelorette party. He, like, insults them during his speech. Then there's Nikki, who is Lou's sister, who is getting divorced from her husband, sleeps with Josh, shows up late to the bachelorette party, isn't, like, there for Lou until the very end, where she's, like, sort of trying to be buddy-buddy with her. And then the other two friends, what are their names? They were barely even in it.
Yeah.
Their names were Vivian and Corrine.
Vivian and Corrine.
Yeah.
They could basically not have been in the movie, and
Yeah,
it wouldn't
I
have
feel
changed.
like
Definitely Vivian. 100% could have, like, barely was there.
Yeah.
Like, didn't have a real role.
I don't think Corrine did either.
Yeah.
Corrine had more of a presence, though.
Yeah.
Corrine made out with Helen. That was about it.
Yeah, no, but there was the whole thing, like, the fact that, she is some, like, a singer, and she, like, was on tour, and she sang at the dinner, and then she also she did that whole song at the poolside, and that went on way too long.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't make sense.
Yeah, Corrine was, like, their friend who was supposed to, like, it's never directly stated if she's, like, a pop star or something, but people constantly asking her, oh, are you on tour? Please sing for us, and stuff like that. And she has scenes where she literally sings for them. One of them is in a public restaurant, which was awkward for everybody involved. And the second one is, like,
Including us.
and she does an entire song. And the cinematography, it takes so long that the cinematography decides that it can't look at the characters anymore, and it has to pan to the sky.
It was almost like it was like a music video.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna break into a music video.
Like, I was watching it, and I was like, I wonder if they filmed this specifically so they could use the music video as promotional material. That was my first thought when I saw that scene. Vivian had, like, a weird part in the story, mainly that weird part being that she didn't at all, and then throughout the course of the movie, each character has, like, at a certain point, basically a confessional about what their first orgasm was like, when it happened, etc. And like, Vivian has a very, like, deep story. She does not go very far into it, but she talks about there's implied sexual trauma there. And
when she was very young.
Vivian and Corrine both had that.
Yeah, both, like, of them.
In their stories.
Yeah. But Corrine in her confessional actually goes ahead to say, like, but that's how I express it through my music, and it's given me a sense of power. I've reclaimed that for myself. Whereas Vivian doesn't have anything going on for her in the story, and her confessional is the only glimpse into her character you get. The only other things that she really does in the narrative is talk to Andy And Andy tells her basically anytime they talk, oh, you're lusting after Josh. And that's the only interaction they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's extremely unfortunate. And to talk more about those interviews, the characters are standing in front of scenery that we don't see anywhere else in the movie. It's like it's a completely different location. The only detail I like about it is that the wallpaper behind them has 2 female moose nuzzling each other, and I was like, that's like a nice little detail.
I didn't even notice
It
that.
was 2 female moose because neither of them had antlers. But everything else I hated because it was like talking head interviews, like we've said, like in the style of like The Office or Parks and Rec, where we just like jump cut away from the action to a slide of the character's name and then them talking about the first time they had an orgasm. And it doesn't fit with the tone of the movie. At least to me it didn't. It felt like it was trying to be way more serious about like how different people have sexual awakenings. And it was really interesting. I kind of thought that was
those were my favorite parts of the movie.
Yeah, one of the best parts of the movie.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I was like, if they made this either way more focused on that, about like your sexual awakening, or way more of a comedy, it would have been great. But it was stuck between those two in a very weird way, where we're like talking about these people who've had sexual trauma and then laughing at like people smoking weed.
Yeah.
It was weird. It was very strange.
They also went nowhere. There was we were given no relief.
Yeah.
Of like, we were talking about this earlier before we recorded, that there could have been some very cute ways to like incorporate it back into like being like, you know, these confessionals being a gift to the brides and stuff like that. But they were out of place, but there wasn't even a glimpse at the end of the movie that like what they were for. Where like, oh, it makes sense that these characters were doing these confessionals now. I get it. But it was, they were just there.
They're very out of place.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost, like, I've sort of been thinking about it, and it's almost like, if you look at it as, like, you're another person at the party, you're the one with the camera, and you're the one talking to these people.
That's how it felt.
Right.
Yeah.
And it, like, I don't know, it just makes it weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, you had mentioned that it sort of felt like if, like, you were at a party with a bunch of people you had never met and you were watching them all interact and have their own drama.
Yeah, it from, like, the first scene where we see all the characters together, it gives the dialogue and the way that the characters interact and the camera angles, everything makes you feel like you're standing in the corner because you've never spoken to any of these people before. You don't know them. Everything is uncomfortable because they clearly have previous tension and you're just like backing towards the door like, please let me out of here. And I really wanted to leave the room at certain points when we were watching this movie because of like secondhand discomfort.
15 minutes in my head I was like, is this even worth, like, should we switch to a different movie? Like, is this worth us talking about?
This is why we have to review these things.
I know.
Because everyone else is going to see that cute trailer and be like, oh, look, a little fun little lesbian movie.
I think the big disappointing thing about this movie, and why I have such a huge problem with the differentiation between the trailer and the actual film, is that the movie tried really hard to have these small, intimate moments where they talk about important things. Specifically, the word that was really the key word that they kept using was safe. Whenever people would sort of have these side conversations where they talk about how they feel while having sex or how they feel while having orgasms, or when they're talking to Lou about sort of how she can project herself more and ask for what she wants, the key word of their story of how they related to her was how they feel safe during sex and what made them feel safe or empowered. Right. And I think they tried to make that the theme, and it didn't come together in any way because it was a bunch of small stories about that, or we heard about that in the confessional, but not in the context of the characters together.
Right.
And it just made it very disjointed, and you didn't actually, when Lou supposedly at the end got it and had her big aha moment, it felt undeserved because half of the safe stories or the things that should have empowered her were not mentioned to her or weren't mentioned to any of the other characters besides you behind the camera.
Mm-hmm. See, the problem that I had with the word safe was because again, going back to Lou and Andy and communication, Lou apparently doesn't feel safe with Andy and doesn't feel safe, like, while they're having sex. And to me, it's like, why are you with a person? Why are you not telling this person, like, you don't feel safe with them? Like, if you don't feel safe with them, why would you even stay with this person long enough to the point that you're engaged and getting married?
Yeah, it felt like a very unhealthy way to present that, because in the end, they do get married, and they're like, oh, this is just like a thing that, like, is. And they don't really work out their problem, and they don't ever say that they're really going to. It's just kind of like, this is a thing that we have, and I'll talk about it more, but, like, let's just shrug it off for now and get married.
They literally say it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not like, oh my god, a realization that we don't feel safe with each other. Either we need to fix this, we should talk about it, or, like, we're not meant to be together. Like, there's no discussion that happens with that. The resolution that they give is, let's just not. Let's just not talk about it. Let's just not do more of this.
Which is so crazy to me, and I'm going to continue to use the word disappointing, which is really just like the key word of how we should feel about this movie, because the concept of it, you know, not giving it being hard or not having the communication to give your partner an orgasm, especially in a lesbian relationship, like, I think that's something I haven't heard having a big discussion, and the fact that that was supposed to be the main discussion of a movie is exciting, and that's awesome, and that's a topic that definitely should be talked about. So when your resolution is that one of the characters gives up and wants to be with this person regardless and doesn't think it's a big deal, to me, the idea, like, the movie wants you to think that she had development because she got into a screaming match with her girlfriend or her fiance to quote, give herself a voice, but the resolution is that she doesn't care to, like, give importance to her voice, which is, you know, the importance of her not having an orgasm. So it's the movie itself thinks it's triumphant, but the way it does it, it's failing
like jerking itself off,
yeah,
ironically.
Like, her conclusion was basically Lou was yelling at Andy, being like, you're a bitch, I want a dog together, we're getting married.
Those are real words.
And our kids will be messed up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Those are actual words. Rachel's not exaggerating.
Yeah, those are actual words that were said.
Everyone applauds this.
Yeah, Andy cries and they hug, and she's, like, so happy about it.
Finally, you yelled at me.
Yeah, like, literally, that's kind of how it ends. I have, like, I've been sitting here, like, stewing this, trying to figure out what the best way to, like, say this is. It's just, like, all three of you, like, don't like Lou. I have sympathy and, like, empathy for Lou. A lot of it, I think. Especially because I feel like in that scene where Andy finally calls her out and is like, well, let's talk about it. Obviously, communication there is bad. But Andy is in, like what genuinely looks like a dissociative state.
Yeah.
Because, like, she doesn't know how to deal with this problem. This is the first time they're having the conversation, and they should have had it, like, earlier. But, like, the dynamic between the couple is that Andy is selfish and thinks of herself, and Lou doesn't know how to stand up for herself because she knows Andy is selfish. And it's, like, I feel like Lou is not developed enough as a character, even though she is the main character outside of Andy in the story. Like, they do not go into her backstory, except for, like, a little bit. She has, like, had sex with other women, but she doesn't really talk about it. She's
no, Andy's her first girl.
Really? She
said,
like,
oh, she's had sex with guys, but you were my first girl.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, like, and she's like, this has always, like, been a problem. I know that, like, rung some bells for me as an ace person. I was like, oh, cool. And I was like, because I related to that aspect, and I know it's not necessarily, like, the same feeling, but I felt like there was something about it that was, like, I know they definitely did not do it on purpose, but it felt ace-coded to me, and I was like, that's me. And especially because they were going for that code word, safe. Like, communication goes both ways. shouting at your partner and telling them to grow up, which is how Andy tries to handle the situation, actually, like, doesn't help anybody. Because if somebody doesn't feel safe with you, like, that's just gonna propel them further into it. So it's a whole big mess.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I don't. Yeah. That's why I don't even understand how they even got to this point.
Yeah.
I think,
you know, like,
I totally, like, I don't want to make this sound like I disliked Lou's character.
No,
like,
you can say that.
No. Well, I think I don't like how she came out on the screen. I think the intention behind her was good.
Yes.
Because I very much understand that feeling of, like, I gotta keep this inside because putting it out there will cause more problems. This is something that I personally have to deal with. I don't want to make it someone else's problem. Like, like, I just shouldn't tell this person this, even though, like, that's her partner. Like, I get that feeling, and I think that's a very interesting thing for a character to deal with on screen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't presented in the correct way.
Yes.
It was like, it was shown as a thing that was like, she was doing selfishly for, like, quote unquote no reason in the movie. Whereas they could have given it that meaning behind it, where, like, again, they needed to make it either more of a serious movie or more of a comedy.
Yeah.
Because if you made this a serious movie, then show her having trauma and show her having this, like, repression issue where she feels like she has to deal with everything herself. That's a fucking relatable thing. Like, do that.
Yeah.
Or make it a comedy. Oh my god, she can't have an orgasm? Like, we're gonna get married soon. Like, you can't go around telling people that. Let's go, like, have a bunch of sex and, like, do stupid things and try to get you to have an orgasm. Like, one way or the other. And they went right down the middle and hit no emotion.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, yeah, exactly.
Like, I don't hate what they could have done with her. The way
I
you're
agree.
describing her,
Yeah.
I would have loved to watch that movie.
Yeah.
But that's not what I feel like they showed us. That's
I agree
what, like,
with that.
the intention could have been.
Yeah. But, like, that's why it makes me mad.
Yeah.
Is that, like, just the fact that she's supposed to be one of the main characters in this movie. And I personally feel like her sister, who is, like, I'm pretty sure her sister is supposed to be straight in the movie.
So.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I felt like got more character development and actual, like, look into her problem than she did.
Oh, let's talk about that,
Yes.
too. A lot of the, like, straight characters get, like, big, long stories that super cutaway time chunks from, like, the main characters. It's like, fucking Josh is in, like, every scene. Josh, who, once again, is Andy's friend from, like, childhood, gets, like, into every scene and is always hitting on someone in a very uncomfortable, disturbing way to watch. And gets a whole storyline about how he was in love with Andy and how he's fucking Lou's sister, and gets this whole big thing. And what was her name? Vivian kind of wanted his attention, and
Vivian and him used to be a thing.
Yeah.
They used to have, like, a lot of casual sex, and then they broke it off.
And he's... I was very uncomfortable watching his character on screen.
He felt the most out of place. To be honest, if he wasn't there and Helen was, I would have been like, these characters don't know how to interact with each other, but I wouldn't have been uncomfortable. Yeah. Whereas he physically made me uncomfortable. There's a scene, so it is slowly leaked out that Nikki, who's Lou's sister, is getting a divorce. Like, you learn... You come in and she and Josh have this weird exchange at dinner, and then they're talking about it late night in the kitchen, and she starts crying on the couch, and she lets it slip to him that does she say she's getting divorced at that point?
Yeah.
She tells him she's getting divorced, and then they cry. She cries. And he, like, he's trying to comfort her. And I felt I didn't like him, and then I immediately hated him and felt uncomfortable. Yeah. Because, like, during the kiss, he puts his face on her shoulder. During the kiss. It was I'm getting to that. He is, during the hug.
We're led to believe that he's trying to comfort her.
During this hug, he, like, the way he puts his face on her, she is wearing some sort of spaghetti trap tank top or dress or something. He he like puts his lips on her shoulder.
Yeah.
And I was like,
and then
oh,
moves to her neck.
And then moves to her
And
neck,
then
and then he
they
kisses
kiss.
her, and they have this weird makeout scene, and she like, he starts like taking off her shirt, and she gets insecure about it, and she says that the insecurity is like, I had 2 kids, I breastfed them, and then the way he immediately is like, oh, I don't care. Like, it's so, like, he's ready to jump on her. That doesn't matter. Like, a real woman. But he says it in such a quick, creepy way.
He's saying anything to, like, get her to sleep. with him,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the first time he made me uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because the whole dinner scene happens before that. Where
Right, yes.
the bachelorette party goes out to, like, what looks like a nice dinner. It's, like, in an outdoor patio space. And there's, like, whatever. It's supposed to be sort of fancy. And they're giving toasts to the brides, and he goes off about how, like, Lou came out of nowhere, and he was always friends with Andy, and, like, he kind of, like, had a claim to her, and, like, who is even Lou? And it doesn't seem like they have a good relationship because they broke up once in the past, and now they're getting together. And, like, that's a big moment, but there are several other lines where he casually creeps on people in a way that's, like, way too familiar to be funny, if that makes sense. Like,
I guess, like, I felt like the scene on the couch with Nikki was where he took action to being creepy, whereas before that it was all these weird lines that
that's
I was
action.
like, I guess,
he's saying that shit, and he knows.
Another thing about Josh is that he is the one that calls Andy out on being a little selfish, which they did set up for that, and that even though Lou not telling her that she isn't orgasming is the problem, like, Andy, they did try to set up Andy as being a mildly selfish character, so that is part of it. So Josh's thought on calling Andy out on being selfish, and his way of doing that is to tell her that he's been in love with her for like 20 years, and she's like, why are you unloading this shit on me? I'm getting married, that's insane. And then he transitions into, well, this is my way of letting you know that you are blind to everyone around you, like, you're not paying attention. And it's used as, it's ignored after that, because it's used as a moment that, like, Andy's having this realization that she hasn't been paying attention to her girlfriend that she should have, or whatnot. But it's a really shitty moment coming from Josh, where, like, rather than just telling your friend and pointing it out, you have to relate it back to the fact that you're in love with them.
Yeah. I guess what I really don't like about Josh is, and especially in, like, a queer movie, is the fact that he is completely gross and completely misogynistic and, like, homophobic in the way that, like, he sexualizes Andy, and, like, his talking head interview about his first orgasm, he doesn't even talk about his first orgasm. He talks about how when he and Andy were young, he would, like, get off to the idea of things that Andy would tell him about her, like, emerging sexuality, and about how, like, she would like a girl, or, like, talk about, like, oh yeah, like, I, like, looked at a girl's boobs today and she looked at me, or whatever, and he would get off to that. And I guess
but he also said that, like, that's still all it takes. It's like,
yeah, like, it's not something that, like, he's grown from. He is still like that. And I don't like the fact that in a queer movie where the 2 main characters are, like, 2 women getting married, that is a character that's not, like, ostracized for, like, we're not supposed to dislike Josh, really. He's just a quirky friend of theirs, and they are all still friends with him. It's
or we're
not
supposed
like,
to think Helen is the weird one.
Right, yeah, exactly. He isn't the source of, like, oh my god, this guy again. He's just there as part of the movie. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe that was just
like,
me.
Yeah, but the thing is also, I just thought of that, it seems like this has happened before.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like, because at one point Andy says, Josh fucked things up again, or something like that, or Josh fucked something again.
Yeah,
like,
it's something everyone accepts. It's
right.
like, oh, that's just Josh being, it's like boys will be boys to the extreme.
Right.
And they're still friends with him. It's not like, oh, I had to invite this guy, like he's my cousin or whatever. Like, there wasn't some excuse and we're supposed to hate him.
Right.
He is their friend and we're supposed to get that. And I don't.
Yeah.
No.
I hate it a lot.
Especially if something like what happened at the Bachelorette has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why continue
It almost feels mildly unrealistic, and this may just be
Mildly?
No, but it just may just be like the queer spaces that I live within with you guys and stuff like that. But like, no group of lesbians would put up with a straight white guy like that to that degree. Like, they'd be like, "You're a fucking creep, get out." Like, you like I don't like that. Felt very weird to me. Like, and I guess it might be the childhood friend thing, but I think the reason why it feels so. Like the reason why I think it wouldn't happen is, like, I can see Andy making excuses for that, although she doesn't seem like a person who would, like, do that, so that seems odd. But, like, none of her other friends seem to, like, on the side dislike him.
No. They're all presented as, like, people with, like their heads on their shoulders, like, you know where they are in life and who they are, and very confident people, maybe except for Nikki. And, like, none of that makes sense, that they would tolerate that. They all just, like, at most roll their eyes at it. The biggest reaction he gets is when he gives his bad speech. People are like, stop.
You're right.
But that's it. And then it's just like, okay, he finishes it up in, like, a good way. And they're like, yeah, there you go.
He's like, my point is that you guys are good together.
Yeah.
After saying that they broke up and it was such a bad time for Andy.
The last thing
I want good together.
The last thing I want in a queer movie is to have to deal with, like, the shit that men do every day.
I deal with that enough. I really don't need to see that.
I ride public transport every day. Like, I don't need that. Like,
we live in New York.
Yeah. Yeah. Final thoughts, I guess, because I'm glad that we ended on bitching about Josh.
Honestly, that probably could have been the whole time.
I could talk for another hour about that.
So I think sort of our wrap-up should be whether or not we would recommend this movie and why.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I get conflicted because I go off of what I wanted the trailer to be. I would watch it if you want to see sort of a failed discourse and talking about, like, the problems in female relationships regarding orgasms. Like, if you want to start a conversation about what could have been with this movie, I think it's great. But I think if you're looking for a movie to enjoy, this is absolutely not your cup of tea.
I'm sorry. If you're looking for an enjoyable experience, this isn't it.
It's true. That's how I feel. This was the most bland 2 hours of my life. Like, I only felt uncomfortable or bored or annoyed. Like, I don't recommend it if you're looking to be happy in your life. But if you're looking to have a serious conversation, like, watch it and then hit me up and let me know what you thought.
Rachel.
Honestly, the main reason I watch movies is to enjoy them. So no, I would not recommend.
We're very different. Rachel, we're very different people.
I would not recommend watching the movie, especially because to me, my three main feelings was boredom, like, annoyance, and, like, just awkward. I just felt awkward through most of it, and to me, like, my takeaway from the movie is just, it was a whole bunch of toxic relationships, and just not about that.
Yeah.
There isn't too much I can say that hasn't been said already. I just didn't enjoy it, and it made me upset.
This movie feels like your kid's sculpture project. And, like, no, like, you put it out on your mantle, and it's a good conversation piece, not because it's good, but because people are like, hey, what the hell's that? And it has potential, because you know what they were getting at. Like, it was supposed to be a cat. It really was. But it's just not a cat. I don't.
Is there a reason you picked cat?
I'm looking at a greeting card with a cat on it right now. On a mantle.
Not the hot dog with the googly eyes?
Not the minion card.
Oh,
No.
God. I didn't know he was behind me.
There's a lot of greeting cards in front of me right now. No, I wouldn't recommend it, which is sad, because if it's what it could have been, I would have recommended that movie. I don't recommend this one.
I presented the trailer to you with, like, bright and shiny eyed, like, hey, oh my God, here's this thing. It's about orgasms. Like, let's talk about it. And then I'm coming out of this movie like, yeah, Netflix could just get rid of it and bring Friends back or some shit.
Netflix should not get rid of it, though, because when we were scrolling, when we scrolled,
Right.
singular scroll,
Single scroll.
through their, like, gay and lesbian movie section, there were, like, maybe 10 options that weren't documentaries, and so many of them were sad.
Yeah.
It wasn't an actively sad queer movie, which is good. It tried to do the right thing, which is good. Rachel almost sneezed, but didn't, which is good.
Please,
Call me
Rachel.
out like that.
I did.
Please, Rachel. I'm wearing the headphones for the sound system.
Yeah, it missed, like, every mark that it put on the list. It's like the check marks were on the back of the page.
And then that page was burned or lost.
Yeah.
Someone forgot what the gift list was. It's gone.
It really is upsetting, though. Like, I kind of want people to watch it to understand what we're talking about, because
Yeah.
you see the potential it could have.
Mm-hmm.
It's on Netflix, so, like, go for it if you have Netflix. It's not hard to find. But,
Yeah. Go ahead, watch The Fields. Let us know what you think.
well, I maybe watch The Fields. None of us recommended it.
Yeah,
we just want people to bitch about it with us.
No.
I
Madison
recommended it for
recommended it.
conversation reasons.
Yeah, the sad cat mantelpiece.
Yes.
Yeah.
I recommend it for the sad cat mantelpiece situation.
Yeah.
But really nothing else. It wasn't enjoyable in any way.
I mean, okay, put it this way. If you've watched all the other queer movies on Netflix, and this is your last one, then go ahead, watch it.
This is your last resort movie.
Yeah.
If
I
you,
think
if
you
you watched
have
all
to-
3 of the other movies on Netflix.
But also, I have to point out, I think you have way too much of an underestimation of how bad the rest of these movies on Netflix are.
Oh,
Like,
maybe,
I have
yeah.
a feeling this
I
is
haven't
in, like,
watched
I
any
feel
of
like
them
this is in, like,
yet.
the, like, definitely, like, the, like, runner-up category, to be real. I don't think we're getting, like, much better than this.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Like,
Well, hey, great first episode, guys.
yeah.
We started with a real doozy.
Hopefully it'll get better.
We really know how to pick them. And I guess we didn't talk about this, but I'm just gonna say, like, if anyone has movies that they want us to watch because you don't want to watch them and be sad about it, fucking send them to our email or tweet them at us. Madison, what is our email? And tweet her.
We have a contact form up on our website. So our Twitter is @QTT Podcast, and our email is queersthething@gmail.com.
Sweet. So send us the movies that you kind of want to watch, but your little gay heart just can't handle the emotion. And we'll filter it for you.
We're here to filter your queer movies.
Yeah.
Let us know your suggestions.
Bye. We already said that, dude.
I've done a lot of queer things.
You're
I've thought about doing a lot of queer things.
You're gay?
I didn't want it to come out like this.
Okay. Well, it's too late for that shit.
Like, what, 6 years too late at this point?
Yeah.
This will be at the end.